It's been a couple weeks since Kendrick dropped that verse on Like That, but Drake has finally stepped in with a response of his own with his leaked track, Push Ups. At least that's what we're going to call it for now because it wasn't really officially released. In fact, when it dropped on Sunday morning, a lot of people thought it was AI, which I think was attributed to the mixing and just how it sounded overall, but that's whatever. Regardless, because there wasn't really any official word on it, I didn't even listen to it until later in that day. And it's also kind of why I waited till now to even record about it, aside from just wanting to enjoy my weekend. We did also get a response from Rick Ross, which I will talk about a little bit later as well. But anyways, let's get right into it. We're not going to go through every single line and whatnot, but we'll touch on some of the important bits and the points that he's trying to get across. This song starts off with him saying, "I can never be nobody number one fan. Your first number one I had to put in your hands," which is in direct response to what Future said on We Don't Trust You. You a guy's number one fan, sneak dissing, I don't understand, etc. While this also is touching on how Future got his first number one off of a Drake song for Way Too Sexy. He also mentions on this part that he is the hit maker that y'all depend on, which is kind of hard to dispute because honestly, for years, the cheat code has been a Drake verse or cosign. Like, once you get one of those, you're going to get some sort of popularity, and you're going to basically from there, you got to figure it out on your own. I mean, look at Block Boy JB. Like, he popped off because of that one song with Drake and since has fallen into obscurity. Anyways, after that, Drake very quickly shifts his focus to Kendrick with the next bit. "Backstage in my city, it was friend zone. You won't ever take no chain off us. How the fuck you big stepping with a size 7 men's on?" Which is directly responding to Kendrick saying "we snatching chains" line by saying that you physically cannot do that, but also that he wouldn't because of the way that he has behaved backstage. Like, he was super friendly and all that. So it's kind of along that same sort of feeling as, oh, this person would never hurt a fly. They're totally harmless. Like, that's sort of energy from him. Like, no, you don't have that in you. You don't have that dog in you. We also do get another foot-size bar from a Young Money artist, so that's fun and interesting. He continues on by saying, "Extortion baby, whole career you've been shook up, cause Top told you drop and give me 50 like some push-ups." With the Silent Hill inflection, which this continues on and makes it feel that Drake knows something about Kendrick's deal, either with Top or Interscope. So somehow here, like, Kendrick's not getting money, like he's getting played essentially and being told to do things. He also then mentions how Kendrick's last album bricked and everyone's been making excuses for Kendrick because they don't want to see Drake win. And the reason for this is fans are going to do this all the time. Even though Drake is definitely more of a pop artist in my mind, and I think a lot of people's minds, they're both rappers at the end of the day. So fans are gonna be like, "Oh, this person's better than this person," and the only reason that this album didn't sell is because he's not doing pop music or whatever. Like, basically trying to downplay Drake's popularity and, just his current lasting power. I mean, he's been dropping constantly and consistently, like, and has been, consistent across the board in terms of sound. Like, it's not anything groundbreaking or amazing, but when you compare that to Kendrick's releases and how it's a little bit more spread out and not as consistent, I guess, like, you can make those arguments. Regardless, he then talks about money a little bit and mentions how Kendrick's done songs with Maroon 5 and Taylor Swift and how that can be seen as hypocritical because Kendrick's always just been seen as this more conscious lyrical rapper that doesn't do pop records. It doesn't do anything that is in the public eye like that and is applauded for it. But then he also does songs with Maroon 5 and Taylor Swift. So it's a little bit like, okay, kind of weird that you're doing that. I'm sure it's also especially frustrating for Drake because, again, they're always put up against each other, and these other, like, real rap fans constantly put Drake down for leaning more into that pop lane. But again, different artists, different lanes, whatever. This feeling, or this bit about the Maroon 5 and Taylor Swift line does also lean a little bit into the Top told you drop and give me 50 angle, because it almost insinuates that Top is the one that made Kendrick do those songs. Like based on the information that we have about Kendrick, we wouldn't necessarily think that that's what he would want to do. Whatever. I mean, that's entirely possible. Drake then goes on to mention how Kendrick's not even in the big three because people like SZA, Travis Scott, and 21 Savage have all wiped him down, which is really just a numbers game. All of their albums have sold better than Mr. Morale did. And honestly, like, I keep wanting to say that it's just purely like technical skill, like that's where we wanted to focus. But it's hard to say that the numbers and popularity of the big three and just people in general don't matter, because the whole point of the big three originally is that they were the biggest rappers of their generation, which encompasses lyrical and songwriting abilities, but I'm pretty sure sales have a pretty strong play in that as well. Because if you look again at that generation, there's probably better rappers that you can think of that deserve that lyrical spot or whatever you may want to think of. Anyways, he then has that 20 versus 1 line, which is referenced in that story post from Kill Bill. He also responded to the Prince outlived Mike Jack line with "What's a prince to a king? He a son," which is kind of just how things are. That's how familial relationships work. But also, the king of pop, Michael Jackson, has a son named Prince. So that's neat. There was also a quick shot at Metro with Metro shut your whole ass up and make some drums, which I thought was funny. But then he also has some words for The Weeknd with little jabs at his management and how they don't really have as much pull in Toronto as Drake does. And honestly, this whole part about The Weeknd feels more of a focus on his management and less of a diss towards The Weeknd. Basically just a way to bring light to how people handling The Weeknd move. Maybe this and the top part is just him trying to say, oh yeah, like all these people are under management that necessarily don't necessarily care for them and take advantage of them, whereas I'm just me. I'm just handling it all on my own. That sort of thing. But anyways, we get another Future reference with the talk about Rolling Loud, where he thought it was cute that they were hyping up the song before we knew Kendrick was on it. And then goes on to say, she'll probably change if your baby mama start to kiss and tell, which is in reference to Sierra and her song Kiss and Tell. It almost feels like Drake is warning Future that he could get more information on him from her. Then as the verse ends, he says, I'll be rocking every fucking chain I own next visit. I be with some bodyguards like Whitney. Again, going into the Snatch and Chains bit, because Drake is essentially teasing him. He's like, oh, look at all my chains. They're all right here. Just take them. But then the second part is it could just very well be a Whitney Houston reference, but it could also be seen as mentioning Kendrick's wife. And the last time that Drake mentioned somebody's wife, we got Story of Added on. So maybe he's just trying to get some crazy response. Then we get into the second verse, and it is a little bit lighter than the first as far as direct shots go, but he does mention Rick Ross right away with, I might take your latest girl and cuff her like I'm Ricky. Can't believe he's jumping in. This dude turned 50. Every song that made it on the chart he got from Drizzy, which is kind of a quick reminder of Rick Ross's past as a correctional officer, but also a nod to how Drake invited Rick Ross's ex to one of the tour stops. I think it was the Florida one for his latest tour. But it's also an interesting note of age in this, because yes, while Rick Ross is older, and it does sound a little weird for someone of that age to have petty beef and act that way, the same could be said about everyone else involved. Like Drake and Kendrick are nearly 40. And while, yes, rap is young and like this is the first time we're really seeing people get to this age and stay relevant, it's still kind of weird. Like what you're a bunch of dudes in your 40s talking about each other. Like it's just, you're just gossiping and talking shit. But anyways, we love the drama, so here we are. Drake also then mentions J. Cole, and I don't know if he's talking about him pulling 7-minute drill off of streaming or just a conversation the two of them had since like that came out. But he clearly doesn't agree with Cole's assessment of Kendrick's verse. Overall, I do think this track was pretty solid, and I think it did well to respond to damn near everyone in the scuffle. It was also kind of like a little bit of a warning shot again, but a little bit more so than what J. Cole had provided. Even though I don't think that can even be thought of as a diss anymore. I'm sure Kendrick, whenever he does come out, will say something about it. But regardless, the main focus of this track was always going to be Kendrick. But the person I didn't expect him to show as much attention to was Rick Ross. I know there is more drama there, and we'll touch on that in a little bit when I break down that song. But it's definitely interesting given how many songs that they've done together and how good those songs are. But anyways, that's pretty much all I got. Part of me is excited for all this back and forth because drama. But drama, like hip hop always has this sort of history of airing out beefs and grievances through songs. But then the other part of me is like, are we just going to bring up random personal stuff that's just, you were just doing it to attack someone's perceived character? If this is really just a matter of, oh, I'm a better rapper than you, there are more concrete ways of doing it, like getting on the same track or on the same beat. But if we're just going to be, just talking shit about each other, I don't know. It's funny, I guess, but whatever. What do I know? All I know is that we're in for an interesting time in hip hop. Like, this is exciting. And, Kendrick does need to respond at some point. I think people are saying that it is ready. I don't know. There was a leak, but that was an AI leak, so some bullshit. At the end of the day, this is what Kendrick wanted. Kendrick wanted a response. He poked the bear, he called people out, and now that he's getting responses, he is obligated to continue. But I'm gonna leave it there. Let me know what y'all think about Drake's version or song. Drake's response. There we go. Let me know what y'all think about that, and stay tuned because right after this one, there's going to be a Rick Ross breakdown. So yeah, let me know how y'all feel. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.